What's going on, people? Welcome back to another episode of the Fantasy Football Busters podcast. My name is Will. Joining me today is my co-host Eric. How you doing today, Eric?
What's up? I'm doing good, man. Glad to be back for my favorite video of the week. I'm sad that it's going to be coming to an end soon because we got trade deadlines coming up.
Yeah, but we got some more exciting stuff coming up too. You guys will hear more about that in the coming weeks. We just got to
That'll
iron
be a
out
little
some
bit of a
details.
yeah, that'll be a little bit of a surprise. I'm probably more excited for that. So yeah, that's a good point.
Oh yeah, so we're gonna have a lot of fun soon. But we are recording this on Thursday, November 17th, just for context, in case some shit breaks or something happens, bro. Come on, man. It's like 9 o'clock. Give us a break. So we're gonna talk about some buy sells, but we're actually gonna do this more so gearing towards the playoffs because fantasy football playoffs are coming up soon.
Yep.
So yeah, hopefully we're gonna give you guys some stuff of value, and we're gonna start off with our buys for the week. I'm actually gonna let Eric lead the way through this because he's our trade guru.
If you can call me that. But yeah, so we'll start out with the buys. We got Ramondre Stevenson. And that might be a little bit of a surprise just because his value is so high. So it might be tough to get a trade through, but I'll give you some reasons why it might be possible. First of all, I'm recommending that contending teams specifically target Ramondre. And that's it's because he has a really difficult stretch run of defense coming up for the next 3 weeks. I think that's why you might be able to buy him if you can convince the other team that he's going to struggle. Patriots play the Jets, the Vikings, and the Bills, who are all in the top half of the league in fantasy points allowed to running backs. But then after that, for the final 4 weeks of the fantasy season, including the fantasy playoffs, they play Arizona, Las Vegas, Cincinnati, and Miami. Other than Cincinnati, all of those groups are in the bottom half of the league. They're really pretty bad as far as run defenses go. So I think he's going to be great down that stretch run for people in the playoffs. We also just got news yesterday. It was yesterday, right, Will?
Yep, it was
For Ty
yesterday, I
Montgomery.
believe.
That Ty Montgomery is not going to be back this season. So that probably means that Ramondre has that passing down role all to himself, and that's really where his high floor comes from, and a lot of his ceiling games come from that great usage in the passing game. So, like I said, if you can find a team in your league that has Ramondre and maybe they have a losing record or they're really struggling to make that push for the playoffs, where you're more solidified as a contender and a playoff team, I would target those type of teams. Try to sell them on the fact that he's going to struggle in these next few matchups and he's not going to be able to help them in that playoff push, and try to get him that way.
Yeah, that's amazing advice. Honestly, I can't tell you guys anything better than that. I got nothing to add. It's just amazing advice. Um, yeah, playoff. Really start taking a look at playoff matchups though. It is getting to that point of year where you do have to
For sure.
start planning weeks ahead now. Like even if you're, especially if you're up, if you have a really good record and you're locked in
Yeah.
the playoffs, start looking into that.
100%. Yeah, that's going to be kind of the theme of a lot of today's players. Not so much with Devonta Smith, though. So that's the next guy that we have on this buys list. Devonta Smith is coming off of what should have been a really nice game last week. I think he had 14.6 fantasy points, half PPR fantasy points before that last play of the game where they were trying to do the lateral, whatever you want to call it at the end of the game to try to win, get down the field. And it ended up being recovered for a touchdown for the Commanders. And somehow, I'm not sure how it worked out, but he went from 14.6 fantasy points to 10.9. It dropped him
Mm.
so much for like a fumble and like lost yardage or something. Not sure how that worked out. But if you combine like that output with his previous two disappointing weeks, then maybe people are looking to sell him off. And I think we can capitalize on that. We've been saying that he's a buy for a while. We've been shouting him out for the past couple weeks, and we just found out that Dallas Goedert is going to IR. AJ Brown seemed to tweak his ankle in last week's game, and so I just think that the Eagles are going to have to rely on Devonta Smith more, and so he's going to be a more featured player in this offense.
Yeah, I agree. His usage should definitely go up. Dallas Goddard going down is actually kind of huge for this team because he was getting a huge target share out there, and now it's gonna have to go somewhere. And Devonta Smith is talented enough, as we said, week in and week out. He's talented enough to carry the load. So actually
Yeah.
exciting to see what Devonta Smith does going forward.
For sure. Yeah, and I think it's worth mentioning because people might be interested in the backup tight ends for the Eagles. They have Jack Stoll and Grant Calcaterra. Stoll, I think, is more of like a blocking tight end. They have used him a little bit in the passing game. Calcaterra, I want to say, is a rookie. I forget what college he went to, but I think he's more of like the receiving tight end of the two. But I really think it's probably going to be a split between the two of them, and I don't think either of them are like really talented enough to earn a huge target share in this offense.
Gotcha. And Calcaterra out of SMU.
SMU. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, so that is my spiel for Devonta Smith. I would encourage you to go target him in trades. And then the next guy on this list is Michael Carter. I think you could probably make a decent argument for either of the Jets running backs, James Robinson included. I just prefer Michael Carter. I think that he's probably, at this point in his career, more explosive, just considering James Robinson is coming off of his Achilles tear. But anyway, so for Carter specifically, I think he's probably another playoff run buy for me, somebody that has a good matchup late in the season. He's going to face New England, Minnesota, and Buffalo in 3 of his next 4 games, though. And so similar deal to Ramondre, where you could try to convince the Michael Carter owner in your league that he's going to have a tough time against these defenses. And, you probably want to throw in there that he's splitting work 50-50 with James Robinson, so he's not the true workhorse or whatever. But the thing that I'm focused on here is that in weeks 15 through 17, the Jets played Detroit, Jacksonville, and Seattle, who were 26th, 22nd, and 25th, respectively, against opposing running backs. And also, Michael Carter is a really good pass catcher. So even in negative game scripts, I think his floor is pretty safe. But the Jets' offensive line has been playing really well, and the team has been relying a ton on the run game since Zach Wilson came back. So I think Michael Carter is a good buy for all the same reasons I said about Ramondre.
About to say, and even with those teams that they're playing against in the playoffs, with Detroit, Jacksonville, and Seattle, teams that have been able to put up points this year too. So to say that the Jets should have to also put up points, and it should be good games out there. So Michael Carter should be highly involved. So I think that is a great move.
Yeah, for sure. And then we'll get into our last buy of the day. We have Pat Freiermuth. He's the Muth. He's underperformed for the past 2 weeks. He put up 7.7 and 5.6 fantasy points in his last 2 outings. But his usage has actually been really encouraging, and I think his fantasy production is going to start to catch up to that soon. Last week, the Steelers had their first game without Chase Claypool. And with Chase gone, Freiermuth led the team in targets and also ran more routes from the slot and out wide than he had all season long. He just happened to be going up against the Saints defense, who has so far allowed the fewest points to tight ends. But also prior to those 2 weeks, Pat had been producing really well. He was also doing so without scoring touchdowns. His touchdown rate from last year was 11.7%, whereas this year so far it's at 2.8%. Now, I'm not going to say that touchdowns are like a sticky stat or something that you can count on to be the same year in and year out, but I do expect that rate to climb a little bit because the difference between those two numbers is just really, really high. So usage wise, I really like what's going on for Pat. I think that he's going to be a more featured part of this offense, and I do expect him to score more touchdowns down the stretch.
Yeah, I think the Steelers have a big opportunity to really sort of find their footing now that Chase Claypool is gone, and they can start to focus on some of their younger pieces. Not even younger pieces. Chase Claypool is still young, but some of their other pieces they have on this team. That touchdown rate is a little scary, but that you also have to remember they haven't really been in the red zone a lot either, and a lot of those touchdowns last year came from Pat Freiermuth being in the end zone and being that red zone target. So we'd hope that there's going to be some sort of regression that changes and the Steelers do get in the red zone and Pat Freiermuth finds more luck getting into the end zone. So I definitely do agree there.
Yeah, and that's a good point to bring up too on just the other side of the coin where, all these tight ends have risk.
Yeah.
We're in a really terrible tight end landscape, and it's definitely possible that touchdown rate doesn't increase. But I still think he's probably worth the buy just considering if you don't have Travis Kelce, that too. But yeah, if you don't have Travis Kelce, like who else are you really putting out there?
Yeah.
Okay, and then we have some names that I didn't feel comfortable putting a stamp on like as a buy, but I wanted to discuss because I think they're good names to bring up, and I wanted to get your opinion, Will, on these guys as well. So Alvin Kamara is on here. He's had 2 bad games in a row. The Saints quarterback situation is kind of up in the air. I think they're leaning towards starting Andy Dalton again this week, but we'll see if that continues throughout the season. He's got a terrible stretch of run defenses coming up against the Rams, San Francisco, Tampa Bay, and then he's got a bye. So that's just a really, really bad 4 weeks. But then when it comes to playoff matchups, they're pretty nice with Atlanta, Cleveland, and Philly. So I want to ask you, do we trust his talent and should we buy low?
I trust Alvin Kamara in the right situations. Like it's like you said, the quarterback situation is kind of up in the air, And I gotta say, if it goes towards Jameis and Jameis is the one out there, it's tough for me to trust Alvin Kamara out there because he's just not going to get
Yeah.
used in the way that he's the most effective. You know, he's not.
Yeah.
Even though he did, score what 3 rushing touchdowns in 1 week this week,
Yeah, it
this
was 3
season.
weeks ago, I think. Yeah.
Yeah, it's just he's way more of a receiving back. Even historically throughout his career, he's been way more of a receiving back. That's where he's the most dangerous, is out in the open field, catching out of the backfield. So it's tough for me to trust the talent if Andy Dalton isn't at quarterback. If he is, I trust him 100%. I think he will end up breaking out of it. At the end of the day, he's an elite running back. I think elite running backs, even in bad matchups, can still make something happen. But in terms of buying low, it may be a little bit tough to buy low, but with that quarterback situation being up in the air like it is, you may be able to find someone who's willing to say, hey, I'm not going to take the chance on Alvin Kamara being good this week, and then trade deadline passes, and then Jameis is in at quarterback, and now I'm screwed
Yeah.
out of a running back. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, yeah, I like what you said. I think it's risky, which is why he's not, full on a buy for us. And I think if you're going to buy him, you need to be like for sure in the playoffs, because I don't know that I would be counting on him these next 4 weeks with those matchups in the bye.
Yeah.
So you need to be locked in for the playoffs, probably one of the top 2 teams in your league if you're looking to target him. We've seen him go down the stretch run in the past and win people fantasy championships, which is part of the reason why I was inclined to put him on this list. But yeah, definitely a risky one. We'll leave that up to you guys. And then the second name on this shorter list is Amari Cooper. This one is super weird. Deshaun Watson is coming back in week 13. We'll have to wait and see how that kind of changes the offense. But I would imagine that the pass volume will probably increase going from Brissett to Watson, and that could potentially mean good things for Amari. But we got to talk about these home and away splits for Amari Cooper. It's some of the craziest shit that I've ever seen, to be totally honest. Like, so far this season, when playing at home, Amari Cooper is averaging 10.4 targets, 6.4 receptions, 90.6 yards, and 21 fantasy points per game, which I believe would be good for like the wide receiver 5 overall. And then on the road, he's averaging 4.25 targets, 2.5 receptions, 33 yards, and 5.88 fantasy points per game, which is like wide receiver 97th or something. It's such a huge difference home and away. And like, why? It doesn't make any sense to me. Even for his entire career, he's averaging 13.8 points per game at home and 9.4 points per game on the road. And then for context, for we have the rest of the way, 4 of his remaining 7 games are on the road, including this week against Buffalo, where they're expecting over 3 feet of snow.
Yep.
So I don't know. Like, clearly he's really talented. Deshaun Watson is coming back. Do we trust these splits to continue? I have no idea.
I mean, it looks like you said, this looks like a career thing at this point.
Yeah.
It's not even just a coincidence. This looks like it's a career stat.
But like, why? Like, how? If this was anybody else, I'd be like, that doesn't matter. But he's been doing it since he came into the league.
That boy gets
It doesn't.
butterflies, bro. He gets them jitters.
I guess.
He needs that
I
home
guess.
crowd behind his back, bro. Other than that, he don't fuck with it, bro, I guess.
Yeah, and it's not even like, I think actually, now that I think of it, he does have like dome versus outside splits that are somewhat similar, but like at home in Cleveland, like that's cold, that's outside in the weather, and he's performing out there. I don't know. I'm trying to find other reasons why this would make sense, but it just doesn't.
Hey, man, but I know one thing, though. Even if Amari Cooper doesn't want it, Deshaun Watson's going to make sure it happens. Am I right?
Holy shit.
So, when it comes to Amari Cooper as a talent, if it's getting thrown his way, he might get it. Who knows? Who knows, man?
That was wild, but that was fire. Did you just come up with that just now?
Just
that
now.
Was real good.
Hey, appreciate that.
Respect, but not to the tickler. He's gross.
Yeah, if it's one thing Deshaun Watson's going to do, he's going to get his balls at you, man. He's going to do that.
God damn.
It's just up to Amari to catch him at that point, bro.
Whew. Okay. Yeah, I needed that. That was good. I think that's enough to say don't buy Amari Cooper. All right. let's move on to the sell category here. First one on the list for me is Michael Pittman Jr. I think it's probably time to capitalize on any sort of Colts optimism that people might have after that game against the Raiders. I just think they got kind of lucky in Jeff Saturday's first game. It came against, like I said, the Raiders, one of the worst teams in the league and probably the worst defense in the league. And also, they definitely surprised everybody, including the Raiders, by starting Matt Ryan. It seemed like Sam Ellinger was the guy the whole week. Um, and then during warmups, they're like, nah, it's going to be Matt Ryan. So not only did they play against a terrible defense, but also an ill-prepared defense. They're not going to be surprising teams anymore like that. And every single defense that they play for the rest of the season is either, or well, they're in the top half of the league against wide receivers and or in the top half of the league in pressure rate. And the Colts offensive line has been bad. Matt Ryan doesn't seem to be able to perform well under pressure. And then for Michael Pittman specifically, even in the Raiders game, he didn't get to 10 fantasy points. He's only topped 60 yards receiving in 3 games this year. And it seems like Matt Ryan might actually have more rapport with Paris Campbell at this point than Michael Pittman. So there's a lot of things working against MPJ for me. And so if you can get any sort of value for him, I'd probably be looking to bail.
Yeah, and Michael Pittman doesn't have the best matchups going forward either, I believe.
Yeah.
So it's just if you can sell him, he's one of those names that you could sell and you could get something good back for him. But yeah, I'm not confident in this Colts team. Jeff Saturday, like you said, I think he got extremely lucky. High school coach Jeff Saturday. Um, it's tough for me to really believe in anybody on this Colts team except for maybe Jonathan Taylor. He seems like he's back, and like you said, Paris Campbell showing to have good rapport, but Michael Pittman for some reason just not able to really get it done this year outside of a few games.
Yeah.
Which is
Yeah,
crazy because he's shown that he can do it. He's got the snap share for it. They just aren't going
for
to.
sure. Yeah, it's weird. Like, I mean, he tied the team lead in targets, I think, and receptions last week. It's just the way that they're using him isn't exciting. It's a lot of just like hook routes, comebacks, stuff like that. Not super like, I don't know. I don't want to say fantasy relevant because if you're catching the ball, it's fantasy relevant.
But
But
they're
like,
not putting
not
him in positions to make plays.
yeah. It's
Yeah.
like go pick up the short yardage that we need. Go pick up this first down. They're not letting him be explosive, which I think he's probably capable of.
Yeah, I agree.
And yeah, you mentioned, it might be tough to sell him just because he hasn't been performing that well, and I think that's probably the case. It might be a little bit of a sell low situation. I'm just hoping that you can, like I said, capitalize on this past win for the Colts, and hopefully, I don't know, sentiment for that team and the players on it is kind of on the rise. That's what I've been hearing from a lot of the podcasts that I've listened to and stuff like that. People are more excited about the Colts now, so hopefully you can translate that into a trade.
Hell yeah.
And then the second guy on our sell list is James Conner. I just think he's so incredibly touchdown dependent. He's a really inefficient runner. We've known that for the past couple of years. He's getting a lot of volume, which, that's good, but it's in a below average offense. And those just aren't typically guys that I want to bet on. But to make things worse, the Cardinals' offensive line, which was already really bad, is now missing their starting left tackle and their starting right guard to injury. Plus, again, on top of that, even they still have their bye coming up in week 13, and 4 of their next 6 matchups are against some of the toughest run defenses in the league. They play San Francisco, New England, and Tampa Bay, who are ranked legit first, second, and third against opposing running backs so far this season. And then they also play Denver, who's in the top half of the league in that category as well. So I like the usage that James Conner is getting, and I think he's shown clearly that he can score touchdowns, but I just don't know that I trust it in this Arizona offense.
Yeah, I don't trust it, and it's like you said, or like we said earlier, it's just it's been sort of a career thing for James Conner. Outside of that first year that he got the start for Le'Veon Bell over with the Pittsburgh Steelers, he's really been touchdown dependent ever since then. He hasn't been efficient ever since then. And I don't think that's going to change at any point. He's got tough matchups who, like you said, I don't see them really being effective in the run game at all too much going forward. And this team has been really bad. They've been really bad. Even to say that they're below average, I think that might be an oversell at that point. They've just been pretty bad.
I might be giving them too much credit.
Yeah. But it's just that, I don't believe in James Conner. And if you can sell him off of that big week, he scored, 2 touchdowns last week?
Yeah, he went for over 20 fantasy points.
Yeah, this is the best time. This is your opportunity if you're a James Conner owner and you've been looking to get rid of him or you've been looking to beef your team up a little bit. This is the time right here, right now.
Yeah, for sure. And also, we're not in the business of predicting injuries, but if there's anybody that we can predict it for, James Conner is probably near the top of the list.
Mm-hmm.
So that's another reason why, especially in a workhorse role where he's getting a ton of touches, maybe a little bit more likely that he breaks down.
Yeah, he's not the most
We'll
durable
see.
guy in the world at all.
Yeah. So that will do it for our like full on sells, and then we have another couple guys similar to the ones in the buys where I'm not sure if I want to put my stamp on them as sells, but worth discussing. So I have Joe Mixon on here, which might be shocking to some people, especially coming off that 50 bomb performance last week or 2 weeks ago because they had their bye. Um, but he's got Tampa Bay, New England, and Buffalo in the fantasy playoffs. So again, if we're looking at fantasy playoff matchups for teams that are, probably solidified to make it a deep run in the playoffs, are you willing to sell high off of a 50-point performance?
Absolutely. I think that, it's one of those situations like we talked about where usage has to sort of meet up with production at some point. Joe Mixon happened to get all of his production in 1 week. But going forward, I don't think he's going to boom like this again. Obviously, he's not going to put up another 55-point game. Otherwise, he's one of the best fantasy football running backs we've ever seen. But I do think he'll be at least effective. I just don't see him being super effective going forward, especially against all these tough matchups in the playoffs. I think they're going to have to fight a lot. He has been getting worked in more in the passing game, so that is encouraging for sure.
Yeah.
But, like I said, they're not sells because we think they're bad, but they're sells because I'd rather have somebody else with a better matchup going into the playoffs than Joe Mixon.
Yeah, so let me pose this question to you because I think it might be possible, especially off of a crazy performance that he just had. We have Ramondre Stevenson and Devonta Smith sitting up there in our buy category. If you could take Joe Mixon and turn him into Ramondre and Devonta Smith, is that something that you'd be willing to do?
I would take that trade any day of the week, I believe. Like,
Yeah.
if I could get the two of them for just Joe Mixon, absolutely.
Yeah, because I do think at this point, like Ramondre has been really good, and I think he's going to continue to be good. And like I said, he's got that good playoff matchup coming up. But you could definitely get Ramondre plus more for Joe Mixon. I don't know if you could get Ramondre plus Devonta Smith, but it's probably not too far outside of the realm of possibilities there.
Yeah, it's not too far-fetched at all.
Yeah. All right. So that one we came to more of a solidified conclusion. We're not saying that you need to sell him. I think we both agree that he's going to continue to perform and have good fantasy weeks. But his matchups are tough. And yeah, if you're looking future forward towards the playoff schedule, you can try to find somebody that'll help you out more.
Mm-hmm.
And then the last guy up on this list in that same sort of category where we're questioning.
Come on, man.
I can't wait to hear your take because this is somebody that you've talked about a lot so far this season. It's Tua Tagovailoa. Tua plays against San Francisco, the LA Chargers, Buffalo, Green Bay, and New England in weeks 13 through 17. That's a really, really tough stretch. And do we trust that he's going to perform for fantasy regardless of the matchup? Should we explore trading him, for example, for a guy like Lamar Jackson, who's kind of underperformed so far this season, but he's getting Mark Andrews back and whose schedule the remainder of the way is just way, way better?
So I think this is more of a question of not so much do I trust Tua going forward, but do I trust Mike McDaniel going forward and his game planning, And
Yeah.
at this point, with as much as Tua has done this season, as much as the Dolphins have been able to do, and as much as I really want to root against Tua every single week, every time that he has played for this team, they have been hyper successful.
They've won every game that he started.
Everything's been drawn up exactly the way they needed it to be. And it's not like they're just running the ball every play either. They're throwing the ball. Tua's out there. He's involved. He's been one of the most efficient quarterbacks that we've probably ever seen, honestly, when he's been on the field. He's been super efficient.
Statistically so far, like his EPA, his expected points added, and like his WAR and stuff, his team statistics have been incredible.
Yeah. And it's hard for me to root against that, but I like Lamar Jackson better for his ceiling, I think Tua is definitely the safer floor play, but Lamar Jackson has that ceiling that can win you a championship. So I think if you could explore that and you could trade a Tua for Lamar Jackson going into the playoffs, I think it's definitely worth looking into. As much as Tua has really done, I don't want to root against him at this point because he's just succeeding a lot. But that's more from a football perspective, not really from a fantasy football perspective,
Yeah.
Whereas I do want that firepower on my team of like a Lamar Jackson who could get me through to that next part. But I don't know. Tua's had some great games, so this is really a tough one. What do you
It
think
is
about
tough.
this one?
Yeah, I'm trying to pull up Tua's stats so far, so bear with me for a second. I got him right here. So I'm just trying to look back at some of his previous matchups. New England against Week 1, 14.8 points. Buffalo in Week 3, 11.44 fantasy points. Pittsburgh in Week 7. I can't remember. I think he was fully healthy. I don't think he got injured in that one. Only 15.94 fantasy points. But the other games, he had that 38-point blow up game,
Mm-hmm.
29 against Detroit, 24 against Chicago, 23 against Cleveland. He's looked really good. I do worry a little bit, not necessarily for the team, like you said. I think Mike McDaniel is a fantastic head coach. I think this Dolphins team has what it takes to beat these tough matchups. But I think fantasy wise, Tua might take a little bit of a step back in those
Mm-hmm.
games. So yeah, I think I'd probably be willing to make that trade for Lamar Jackson, especially considering Mark Andrews is coming back. Hopefully, he'll start to improve his fantasy production. It's risky. It's a little bit scary, but I think it's something that should be on people's radars, which is why I put it on here.
Yeah, I think also with sort of Jeff Wilson emerging the way he has, they can kind of lean on the run game a lot more too, because now they have Jeff Wilson and Raheem Mostert, who have both been highly effective in the run. Like you said, it's very well seeable that Tua could be game planned out of a game as much as he could be game planned into a game, you know. But
Yeah,
as Lamar Jackson as a talent, I trust that a lot more.
yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Yes, sir. All right, you wanna break us down? You wanna
Oh,
take the people
hell
out of
yeah.
here?
Let's go for a journey, people. I appreciate you guys for watching this video. Make sure you guys do all that great YouTube stuff. Push us forward in the algorithm. Give us a like. Give us a subscribe. Make sure you hit that notification bell so you can know when our newest videos drop. And leave a comment. Anything you want. You can leave a comment for fantasy football advice. You can leave buy sells. You can leave trade advice. Any type of question you've got for us going forward, ask away. We're giving free advice. There is no paywall. So just drop them. We will answer. Check us out on TikTok. We got a lot of cool stuff going on over there. We got our spin the wheel challenge that we're actually about to record very soon, so I'm excited for
Heck yeah.
that. And yeah, we got all our other fantasy football stuff. We got some waiver wire stuff, some plays of the week, stuff like that will be going up. Just the extraneous stuff that doesn't make it on this channel. So yeah, check us out there. Check us out on our other socials on Twitter. You can DM us on Twitter any questions you've got as well. Eric, you got anything else for the people before we go?
Not too much, man. I think you covered most of it. Go check out all that stuff. Like you said, links down in the description below. If you made it this far in the video, we appreciate you. We love you as always. And yeah, we'll catch you in the next one. Peace.
Peace.